Alright, so obviously the Cleveland Cavaliers have pulled off back-to-back wins against the newly formed Big Three out in Brooklyn, and they've caught center stage of the NBA over this past week, and again for obvious reasons. And yeah, I mean, Cleveland, they've been a very good team to start the season. They've been plagued by injuries, as a lot of teams have, and I don't think their 8-7 record quite truly shows how good this team exactly is. And while I don't quite expect them to finish higher than their fifth place seeding that they currently have, I do again expect that this Cleveland Cavaliers team is going to be a thorn in someone's side come playoff time, just due to how monstrous of a defense Cleveland has formed. In terms of both points allowed and defensive rating, the 2021 Cavs rank 4th in each of those categories, whereas if you look at the flip side on offense, they rank 29th and 28th in those same categories respectively. Now, if you look at any major media site, the main talking point for this Cavs team will be Colin Sexton, and for good reason. He's taken yet another huge leap in his third year in the league. He's now averaging 27 points a game, and he's doing so on great scoring efficiencies. And obviously, most notably, he had the 42-point performance in the Big Three's first game altogether, where it was him versus Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. They went to overtime, and he had some huge clutch shots, was an absolute flamethrower down the stretch. And again, it's good reason why he is getting a lot of the notoriety when it comes to the Cavs back-to-back wins recently. But I'm here to say that the success of the 2021 Cavs goes so much deeper than Colin Sexton, and I mean, I'm just gonna have to say it. I love Colin Sexton. I've been a huge fan of his. I mean, obviously there was that one clip of him in high school where he was staring down the opponent at the free throw line, and then there was the whole 3v5 shenanigan game that happened in college. And I mean, I don't understand how you can not love Colin Sexton just based off of those two performances. But again, this Cavs team just goes so much deeper, and their success is owed to a lot more players not named Colin Sexton. A lot of Cleveland's success this year goes back to that great defense that I mentioned earlier, and it all starts with the paint protectors in Andre Drummond and Larry Nance. And these are both players that they picked up from trades over the past couple of seasons. Obviously, Larry Nance came over when the Cavaliers were overhauling their entire roster around LeBron James in that one year. And then Andre Drummond came over from the Pistons last season in a trade that a lot of people questioned. Although this season, people are seeing this duo in a whole new eye. If you look at the NBA league leaders in steals per game, you'll find Larry Nance at the #1 spot, averaging 2.4 a game, and then you also find Andre Drummond if you scroll down to the 8th spot, where he is tied with a few other players with 1.6 steals per game. And the same goes for deflections per game, where steals and deflections, they're kind of a similar stat, although they offer they're pretty much the same thing. But anyway, Larry Nance, if you look at deflections per game, he also leads that with 4.7, while Andre Drummond finds himself tied for 4th with 3.7. Essentially, having these two great defensive bigs just makes it so that this Cleveland team is able to lock down the paint defensively. It's a very similar ideology that we've seen the Milwaukee Bucks defense be so dominant with over the past couple of seasons, whereas in their system, they have a great rim protector in Brook Lopez and a decoy, player in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Both of those guys are able to lock down the paint with ease. And in having these two defensive pillars for Cleveland, it allows the rest of the lineup around those two to simply just find their way on the defensive end, because if you look at the rest of the lineup, Darius Garland isn't anything special on defense. He works hard. He's just, he's average. Colin Sexton, same deal with him, but he's actually made some great progress since his rookie year, and he just has such a drive to play the game of basketball that I'm not really too worried about him on defense. And then finally, looking at Cedi Osman, another average, slightly above average defender. And all in all, just having Drummond and Nance makes this a defensive unit that is scary for other teams. But I bring up these other names because it brings in the point that this Cleveland team has a great foundation already set to be a top-level team in terms of defense for the coming seasons. I've already mentioned Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Cedi Osman, Larry Nance, who he himself is just playing like a defensive player of the year level candidate type of guy. And then you also add the fact they just drafted rookie Isaac Okoro, who main thing coming out of the draft was his ability to just apply pressure on defense and get into passing lanes and be a great on-ball defender. Then they also made the trade in the James Harden trade. They got both Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince, and Jarrett Allen is just another great paint protector. He should fill Andre Drummond's shoes perfectly in this offseason, because I think it's pretty much a guarantee that Drummond is going to be gone. And although Jarrett Allen also is going to be a free agent, I would assume the Cavs are going to keep him with the same money they were using for Andre Drummond. Outside of that, Taurean Prince is just a great 3-and-D guy. He had his ups and downs in Brooklyn and Atlanta before that, but I still believe in him as a player, and I think he could add another just, rotational wing guy that can add some depth to this Cleveland team that can bring both defense, three-point shooting, all that good stuff that teams love, and a nice solid rotational guy. I mean, overall, this team is only going to grow and get better chemistry as the years go on. And again, this defensive unit is one that is set in stone and is going to be absolutely antagonizing opposing teams for the next couple of seasons. One addition that would have been even better for this young core was if Kevin Porter Jr. could have somehow figured out a way to maintain his stay with Cleveland. Obviously, there were other issues involved in that scenario, and although the talent of Kevin Porter Jr. will be a big loss for this Cleveland team, as at times last season he was looking like their best player on the court, it is something that the Cavs are going to have to live with, and I think it's something that they will live with. And again, it's a talent that is going to be hard to lose, but in the end, this is what happened and we're just going to have to live with it. But with everything else set in stone, there is still one big piece on this Cleveland roster that has to be figured out, and that is Kevin Love and his big contract. Because if there's one thing that's been very noticeable about this Cleveland team so far this season, even more than their outstanding defense, is the fact that Kevin Love just has absolutely no more use for this team. I've talked about in past videos that he should be a top of the list in terms of trade targets for opposing teams and teams looking to win, and I understand that the contract is big on Kevin Love. He's set to make around $30 million for this season and then the next 2 seasons after that, so that in itself is going to make him a very difficult player to move. But looking around the league, the Sixers found a way to dump off the big Al Horford contract, and at this point in their careers, I would definitely say that Kevin Love still has much more to offer than Al Horford. Kevin Love, although he hasn't made an All-Star team in a few years, he can still go get you 15 points and 10 rebounds a game. He's not the greatest defender, but he's an average one. I mean, he's had some instances in his career where he's shown that he can defend, and again, I think the team that I have on my mind that I would love to see him is still the Portland Trail Blazers, and I know that the contracts don't really work out trade-wise, but I would love for them to somehow find a way to acquire him. Just being a sort of third star to Dame and CJ, I would love to see it. I haven't really thought much about where else he could go, but yeah, Kevin Love, there is no need for him to be on this Cavs roster anymore. They've moved on. They have younger guys to focus on and spend their time with, and I think it's just time for the Kevin Love era to end in Cleveland. Overall, the Cavs are another one of those teams where I definitely am not calling them a contender quite yet, although they are going to be an absolute thorn, like I said, in someone's side come playoff time, just because of their defense. I mean, me being a Celtics fan, I always like to bring up my outside opinions for other teams, and I mean, they're playing tomorrow, and I am just not ready to see the Celtics get clamped up. And yeah, I mean, they just dominate teams with bigs. It's, I mean, a lot of the biggest weakness on this Nets roster that we've been talking about as an NBA community for the past couple of days since the trade happened is that they have no bigs. DeAndre Jordan is not good enough to be a starting center in today's NBA. They had Reggie Perry coming off the bench. They signed Norvel Pelle. They're an absolute mess at the center position, and when you face a team that has so many good centers like the Cleveland Cavaliers with Drummond, Larry Nance could play some 5, Jarrett Allen was amazing off the bench in both those games, the team's just going to crumble no matter how good they are, and that's one thing I worry about with the Celtics, and it's another reason why this Cavs team could easily just overpower someone in the playoffs and steal a few games. My point being, this Cleveland team is going to be one to monitor over these next couple of seasons because I definitely could see a scenario a year or two from now down the line where this Cleveland team is finally going to be a title contender, and it's going to be a foundation that's set by their amazing defense and ability to just suffocate other teams. But that'll do it for this video. As always, drop your comments down below on what you think about this Cleveland team. As always, leave a like if you enjoyed this video or enjoy this type of content. And as always, most importantly, thank you for watching.